Hello, before we jump into the video, this is a quick note from future Katey. Just a reminder that I'm not looking for unsolicited advice, especially around my mental health. Of course, comments below are always welcome, whether it's about the video and how much you did or didn't enjoy it, or talking about your own experiences with this deck or spreads that I've shared. But please avoid especially any unsolicited advice and reinterpreting my readings for me in the comments below. Also a brief content warning for discussions around ableism and internalized ableism and my experiences of those things. Thank you in advance for respecting my boundaries, and I hope you enjoyed the video. Hello friends, and welcome back to my channel, and welcome to another episode of Tarot in Practice, the series where I spend some intensive time with one singular deck and I vlog my experience doing different readings and exercises with it. And at the end, I give you my thoughts, give a bit of a review, and decide whether I want to keep the deck in my collection or not. Recently, over on my community tab, I asked you which deck you would like to see me work with in this series next. And you picked the This Might Hurt Tarot. And you've seen the title of this video, so what's going on? I work in retail and it's December. It's already going to be a pretty rough month for me. And for our last two Tarot in Practices, I have spent time with decks that I've never really used before. And so for the month of December, I'm just really ready to spend some time with an old favorite. So never fear, I will work with the This Might Hurt Tarot in the month of January. But for December, I hope you'll forgive me, I've chosen to work with the Next World Tarot, one of my all-time favorite decks that I just have not spent a huge amount of time with in the last year or so. This deck is huge. It's pretty hard to manage, but these cards, this artwork, the messages in the guidebook are so damn good. I don't care. I would do anything to work with this deck because it is one of the most special tarot decks I think exist on the market today. It's contemporary, it's fresh, it's real, it's honest, it's raw, it's celebratory. It's just all the things I ever hoped and dreamed I would find in a tarot deck. I love how colorful and vibrant the artwork is. I love how diverse and representative the characters featured in this deck are. Although this is far from a fluffy deck, this is one of the most hopeful and celebratory tarot decks I've ever worked with. So there is absolutely no way the end of this video is going to be me getting rid of this deck. This is one of my all-time, it's my top 5 favorite decks of all time, without a doubt. Instead, this is just going to be like a journey of me spending some quality time with an old favorite. I hope throughout this video you'll get a sense of just how powerful and incredible this deck can be, as well as getting a good look at many of the cards, some insight from the guidebook, just a good overview of what it's like to use and work with this deck. So that is more than enough chatting. I'm so excited to get to working with this deck. Let's dive right in. So we're here to do our first reading with the Next World Tarot, and the smell is bringing me back. I haven't used this deck much in the last few years. The size of the deck does mean that I find it difficult to do larger spreads with, but additionally I just feel like there's so much in these cards that I almost want to spend like a more intimate moment with 1, 2, or 3 cards when I do a reading anyway. Like I don't feel drawn to doing larger spreads, so I'm never upset at the size of the deck, if that makes sense. There aren't any spreads in the guidebook, so how about we do a past, present, future? It's not a spread I use a lot, and I know we haven't done anything like that in our Tarot in Practice series yet, so why not? Why not do a bit of an old classic that I never use, just to kick things off? So I drew the star for our first card. I've got the Wheel of Fortune for present, which is, I mean, 2 out of 2 major arcana cards. And I'm gonna limit this to like the next 3 to 6 months, future-wise. Got the 3 of Wands. Interesting, okay. I mean, this person looks like they're in a library or a bookshop, but I'm jumping ahead of myself. Let's start with the star card. I love the imagery in this card. It's just so beautiful, so hopeful, so joyful. And to me, it's a card of healing and hope. So the first thing I notice, at least, is the light behind the main character's head and sort of like the yellow sky, and then just the butterflies that are surrounding them. If you look in the bottom right-hand corner, you can see a mortar and pestle with some herbs. And then it looks like a caterpillar on the top of like the handle. And so what this makes me think of is the power of healing. And I think it's a great reminder that the healing work is essential. The healing work comes first, that we can't become some beautiful butterfly until we've done that hard work first. I also love how the character here isn't in some beautiful lake or spring like we see in the Rider-Waite-Smith and so many other star cards. Instead, it almost feels like the bottom of a now dried out spring. They are creating this sense of hope and potential for themselves and maybe their community as well, out of seemingly nothing. It's almost like the butterflies are responding to this in celebration, in optimism of the character's humility and hope. I don't know, I find it honestly quite moving. And I think that this card represents so beautifully what this deck does so well, that the landscape appears apocalyptic. It appears like it's been stripped of all its natural resources, like it's been destroyed, damaged in some way. And yet it's the people who are resisting, who are being revolutionaries in big and small ways. Like, this character is not waiting around for any kind of opportunity, for any kind of recognition, for any healing. Partly maybe because they know that the society that they live in isn't providing that for them, isn't providing the care and the love that they deserve. And so they're making that for themselves. That's what I get from this card. And the earth, the spirit, the ancestors, however you want to see it with these butterflies, I think they are responding to that powerful stance and action that this character is taking. And I just love it. That all sounds very grand. And I suppose that that's what this deck does. It moves me. And I just find it so evocative. So much comes forth. And it's all like such big scale stuff that just makes me, I don't know, have faith in humanity in some kind of way. There's something about this deck that asks me to move beyond being jaded and bitter. And I think this card represents that really, really nicely. And for me, in the past situation for this card, I don't know, there's a few different ways that I could go with this. But more recently, I think this is quite representative of the situation I've been in the last year or two, primarily with my working situation and how it, in the end, felt very much like the landscape that this character is in. It felt barren and hopeless, and like there was no opportunity for me. I didn't lose hope, and it felt like the universe responded to me. Once I made that choice, things just sort of happened to take me out of that situation and to give me new opportunity. It sort of felt like once I made that choice to take care of myself, even in the midst of this environment, the universe responded in the same way the butterflies are responding to this character. The universe responded to me and helped me. That's how I feel about this card in relation to me and my past. Oh my gosh, I've been talking for so long about one card. This is going to be a long video. So for the present, I got the Wheel of Fortune. So in this Wheel of Fortune, we've got a character here sort of like in a seated position, although it almost looks like they're floating, and they're holding a bag. And then they've got all like this, it almost looks like junk, although I'm sure not all of it is, spiraling around them. There's a book, there's a wheel, there's a hammer, there's a flower, all different bits and bobs. And when I look at this card, something I think of is almost like all of this stuff around the character is almost like both the past and possible futures, and it's like they have to make choices about what to carry with them in this bag that they've got. Like what baggage, like metaphorically from their past, that they want to bring with them, and also what tools and opportunities that they want to grab hold of and take ownership of right now. And what I love about this depiction of this card is that I think, at least how I interpret it, it's a beautiful combination of, I don't know, accepting the reality that some things we control, you know, in terms of the bag that this character is holding. What they decide to put in it or keep in it and hold close, that is their choice. But all of this stuff circling around them, that is outside of their control. I think that's such a beautifully nuanced take on quite a complex card of the Wheel of Fortune. I think some cards can lean a little bit more to the side of like, you know, everything is in your control, and other cards in some other decks lean a little bit more, nothing is in your control. To me, this card walks a really healthy, beautiful line between those two realities. That's just what I get from the imagery, and I love it. As for me in this moment, obviously the Wheel of Fortune does represent change. Like change and chance is a big part of what this card is about. And I am in a moment of very, very big change. I think though, I'm also in a moment of recognizing what skills and expertise and knowledge I have gained throughout my past. It's like I'm seeing inside my bag that I'm holding and recognizing how much value I have, value I didn't see before. I'm also seeing the opportunity, and I'm making decisions about what opportunities I am most interested in, what opportunities I want to reach out for, whether they come to fruition in the way that I expect, who knows? But it's just, I feel very much like in that moment of recognizing where I've been, what I've gained, but also looking forward. And I think this card represents that beautifully. And for my future card, I drew the Three of Wands, which is a very interesting card. We've got this main figure who's sort of got a key around their neck, as well as a vest with almost like a, I'm not sure what that is, like a ribbon of some kind. They're holding a couple of books, and there's bookshelves behind them, although the bookshelves don't only have books on them. They've also got jars and dirt as well. And in the background is a bit of a more apocalyptic kind of scene that we often see in this deck. I can't see the titles on all of the books, but a couple of them are Women, Race and Class, Our Bodies, Ourselves, The New Poverty Studies, Free Trade, and Readings for Diversity and Social Justice is the book that the character is holding. And firstly, from a very surface level, like gut reaction, my first thought was just like that I'm still going to be working with books in a bookshop, in a library, something. Like books are going to be a big part of my life. And I like that a lot because I love being a bookseller. So I don't know, that fits. I like too that for me, the Three of Wands is often like about moving forward, venturing out, pursuing or expanding in some way. And often we see a figure actually either heading off into the world or like making a decision about where they're going to go or sending something else out. Whereas in this deck, it's more about expanding our mind and our understanding of humanity and each other, about the expansion of knowledge and understanding and how important that is to our own health and to the health of our communities as well. I wonder too if this is also commentary on how I currently feel a little unprepared for my current position. Being in like a children's bookstore is something I've never done before, and I'm not really familiar with children's literature, so I do feel a little out of my depth. But this person looks comfortable. They look seasoned. They look like they know what they're doing. They look like they always will be learning and continuing to further themselves, but they still look comfortable in this situation. And I wonder if that's sort of recognition of the fact that like come 3 to 6 months time, I will feel a lot more at home and settled than I currently do. I will know a lot more and have a lot more expertise than I currently do. And I just had a quick little look at the guidebook, and the last paragraph or the last sentence reads, "The Three of Wands reminds you to look further than what is being offered and study the possibilities beyond your familiar world." So that is interesting to me because currently like there is a level of familiarity with me and this card because like this person is situated in, well, they're surrounded by books, right? Which makes sense for me as a bookseller. But this doesn't look like your regular old bookshop, does it? And with that last sentence, I am wondering if I'm going to be sort of, I don't know, like something's going to happen or some opportunity is going to come up that will, I don't know, I think I'm still going to be in a bookshop, maybe the bookshop that I'm currently in, but it may be in a different capacity, or I don't know, something might just be a little unexpected. And although the bookshop that I'm in, I know does currently prioritize making sure we have plenty of literature for kids with great representation by authors of all different identities, I wonder if that's going to become more of a concern or more of an issue that we're talking about or something. I don't know, just with, you know, the titles of these books. I'm wondering if diversity and representation will be more of a conversation or will feature more heavily in my role. I don't know, we'll just have to wait and see. So that's the first past, present, future spread I've done in quite a while. I really enjoyed this. I had a lot of fun, but I also just, I feel how I always feel working with this deck. I feel seen, I feel validated, I feel encouraged, I feel supported. I feel like, I don't know, I see the truth of reality without feeling jaded or hopeless. I don't know, I love this deck, I love how it makes me feel, and I'm excited to spend a little bit more time with it. Okay, today we're doing a 4-card spread because I need a little bit of guidance and support. It's never the easiest deck to shuffle, but it's worth it. So I found this spread online called the Why Am I So Stressed Tarot spread. And I'll leave the details of this spread in the description box below so you can find it and the creator. Now, in a way, I kind of already do know why I'm feeling quite stressed and overwhelmed. Primarily, it's because I'm in a new job. I'm doing a lot more hours than I normally feel comfortable doing. And it's Christmas time in retail, in a children's bookstore. It's rough. On top of that, of course, life is just doing life's thing. And there's a few other things that are just stressing me out at the moment. But I really like the spread positions in this spread. So I thought this would be a good one to do just to get a bit of perspective and a little bit more clarity, and hopefully find a way through the rest of this month. So I have to shuffle this deck lengthways because it is absolutely massive. But let's draw the first card, which the position is, what am I missing from my life at the moment? I'm sorry, I'm going to have to shuffle this behind the camera. This is too hard to do. We got the Queen of Cups. Next is the best way to relax right now. Okay, I've got the Five of Swords. What outside circumstances are causing me stress at the moment? I've got the Ten of Swords. Okay, and then card number 4 is what part of my behavior is making my stress worse? We've got the Queen of Swords. So interesting to start off with. Let me turn the ISO down a little so you can see the artwork better. Hopefully that's a little better. I think it's interesting to start with that we've got two queens bookending this spread. What I'm missing and sort of what I'm doing that I need to not be doing, which is interesting, I think. And on top of that, 3 of the 4 cards are from the sword suit, which I think is also quite telling. So let me just straighten these up a little bit for you. So our first card, the Queen of Cups, this position represents what I'm missing from my life at the moment. And I'm going to try and capture these cards as best I can. They are a little glossy, but the artwork's just incredible and so detailed. So as fabulous as the featured character is, the Queen of Cups is, one of the first things I'm noticing is a lot of the items around the Queen of Cups. To start with, of course, the octopus or whatever sea creature is beneath the water is holding up 2 cups of tea. There's also sort of like a soft toy that the character is holding on to. And to me, the bird on their hand looks a bit like a disheveled cockatoo. And cockatoos are a bird that I'm very familiar with living here in Australia. So between the tea, the soft toy, a bird that I love and that I know well, I'm thinking of comfort. There's a sense of celebration and joy in this card, but it's not at the expense of comfort. And I think with this character being sort of lost out at sea almost, it looks like, there's no worry or concern in this character, I don't think. I think they look really comfortable and just like they trust that they're going to be okay. They trust in themselves and who they are. They know themselves and who they are. They're in no way compromising that. But they've also made space for those small needs and comforts. This card almost feels like the counter-argument to the stereotypical hero's journey in a way. I think for a lot of stories that involve sort of like trusting yourself, trusting your heart, following your heart, there's this sense of risk or almost like something has to be lost in order to follow your heart. Whereas this character feels like they've followed their heart, they've become their true self, and they haven't lost anything on the way. Instead, they've gained so much more. Like in some ways, this card looks a little disheveled, like with the bird and, no shoes, and yet it feels so abundant and royal. Like things might not be neat and tidy and fit into a perfect little box, but there is an abundance here. There's an abundance of self-acceptance, self-love, and trust. So what I'm getting is that I need to have a lot more cups of tea and to chill out a little bit, not be so concerned with, making sure my house is 100% tidy or as tidy as I'd like it to be, and instead focus on what it is that I need in order to care for myself. I don't always have to be put together perfectly, but I do need to have my own cup filled. The next card, card number 2, is the best way for me to relax right now. And I drew the 5 of Swords. And now I don't always look too much at the keywords for all of the cards, but this one really stood out to me. And for the 5 of Swords in the Next World Tarot, it is survival. And the person in this card does look pretty tired. They look pretty worn out. And in the background we see pollution and all of the crap of our modern world. And it's almost like this person is like cradling what they hold dear and committing to take care of what they need to, even if it's difficult, even if maybe the odds aren't in their favor right now. And I think the choices in this card in particular, I think it's true for a lot of cards in the Next World deck, but this one in particular, it does feel like it's a message about systemic problems. And I think although my issue at the moment is fairly personal, there are systemic issues that are impacting me. The big one is ableism. Not necessarily coming from any particular individual, but just me trying to participate in a world as a person with a chronic illness, with a disability, trying to do my best, but the world expects certain things from me that I'm not always capable of giving. And that's something that I struggle with a lot internally. I struggle with feeling valuable and like I'm contributing and like I'm participating. Meanwhile, also accepting and knowing and trying to support myself within certain limitations that I have. And so this card feels just really validating in a lot of ways. And I'm not sure if you can hear it in my voice, but I'm finding it quite emotional. And I suppose the message that I'm getting about how can I best relax right now is maybe not so much about, you know, some cushy, nice idea of relaxing, but just doing what I need to get through this period. Like, it is challenging because of my own sort of limitations and stuff that I have to deal with that the world isn't always super supportive of. And I think the way that I need to do that is similar to this character here, is just to hold on to what matters most. Hold on to my values, hold on to what I care about, focus on one or two things that are going to get me through this. Kind of like in a pick my battles kind of way, but not with the same connotation that that saying often brings along with it. I guess I just have to be really specific and almost cutthroat about what I'm prioritizing right now. And primarily that prioritization has to be my survival and my safety. Again, that all sounds very dramatic, but as a person living with a disability in an ableist world, sometimes things do feel that dramatic. Card number 3 is what outside circumstances are causing me stress. And I've drawn the 10 of Swords. Another fabulous 10 of Swords, or Swords card, I should say. And this is just so visceral. I mean, look at this person's face and just like the absolute agony that they're experiencing. And it's like they're on top of this, I don't know, like a bunch of like letters and contents from their bag. It almost just looks like they've lost everything. And the keyword for this card, which I said I don't really pay attention to too often, but is ruin for this one. And the background of this card is just complete desolation. So it just really adds to this feeling of complete ruin, like the absolute end of the road. Like this person has borne all of the burden that they possibly could. And I'm going to try not to get too heavy with this message, but I mean, it's the 10 of Swords. So I'm not surprised that I'm sort of going there with what I'm thinking about this card. But I suppose I'm just thinking about how that my sense of stress and overwhelm at the moment is not the result of one thing. It's sort of the culmination of many, many things, and not just many things happening right now, but the history and the legacy of my own experience. Like there is a lot going on that is sort of weighing me down and making me feel quite overburdened and stressed out. But on top of that, it's almost like the ghost of what has happened to me in the past when I've burnt myself out. Like I know full well what happens when I go beyond my limits. And it's almost like some kind of like low-level trauma response as well, where me not only being in a challenging situation that is sort of pushing me to my edge, also like an awareness, a constant awareness of how much I need to take care of myself so that I don't hit this rock bottom place. Like the threat of what could be, basically, is just an added layer of stress and worry. The reminder of that pain and that trauma is almost causing pain and trauma in the present moment in a way. I don't know if I'm explaining that very well, but I'm just getting this idea of, you know, I think most of us kind of stumble around as best we can with a couple of swords in our back, a couple of wounds or challenges or difficulties that we face. And everybody has that moment, that breaking moment, the straw that breaks the camel's back. And I suppose I have an awareness of what that point looks like for me, and I know there's no coming back from it in so many ways. And I'm scared of it. I'm scared of that 10 of Swords ghost. On top of that, being on my feet all day for many more hours than I'm used to, combined with some physical stuff that I've got going on, does mean that I'm just like literally in quite a lot of pain by the end of the day. I feel quite a lot like this character buckled over with a lot of back pain. And I suppose that's just adding one more sword into the mix, you know? It's just a lot. There's a lot going on, a lot of things that are causing me stress and worry, both internal and external. But I love that the swords are literally penetrating this person. So it's an awareness that even though these may be external factors, they affect me directly, internally, personally. Like the external is not all that external from us, you know, like we don't exist in a vacuum and we can't detach from these things completely. They affect us directly. And then card number 4 is what part of my behavior is making my stress worse? And I've drawn the Queen of Swords, which, as I said, I think is interesting given that the first card we drew was also a queen, but the Queen of Cups. And I think they both have such different feelings and energies in most decks, but especially in this one. So the Queen of Swords can be many things, but I think in more of the shadow aspect for this position and thinking about what behavior this card might represent that is making my stress worse. I'm thinking about the idea that I have a tendency to overthink my emotional responses sometimes. I think in some ways that is a survival mechanism. It's also kind of what I've been taught to do in so many ways through therapy and stuff. But anything, even the most positive thing in the world, has its shadow side. I think I was kind of starting to touch on it when I was talking about the Ten of Swords, but I think a big part of my stress and my worry has been worrying about not taking care of myself well enough, worrying that I won't be able to cope with the stresses in my life at the moment, worrying that I'm going to break, and that in and of itself creates pressure and stress. And I think this Queen of Swords is someone who can sort of intellectualize emotions, think a little bit too much about emotional responses and almost try to analyze or think them away, rather than being more like the Queen of Cups, who seems like someone who just sort of lets those emotions exist, is comfortable with the high and the low tides. I think also the Queen of Swords can be someone who can be quite hard and harsh, both to the people around them, but also to themselves. Almost like a toxic stoic mindset, you know? I think another difference is that the Queen of Swords is often described or perceived as strong, whereas the Queen of Cups is not so concerned with that. And as a result, they're often seen as soft. I think I need to invite and accept a little bit more of my own softness at the moment. Oh, I feel like I need to go for a walk or just have a big breath of fresh air after this reading. Let's just pretend I don't look like this and my room is not a mess and I'm not overexposed and all of the other things. I have been not doing so great lately. I sort of knew that this was coming in some ways. I knew that December was going to be really hard for me. That's part of why I wanted to use this deck instead of a deck that I wasn't familiar with. I knew that it was just going to be really rough this month. Primarily that is the stresses of a new job, a new role, in a much busier work environment, in retail, at Christmas time, and doing about 50% more hours than I have been doing for a long time. On top of that, there's just life stuff going on. My brother's getting married, which is a happy thing, but it's also a big thing. My grandparents aren't doing very well. Like there's just a lot. It's a lot. And I kind of have had a bit of a breakdown, a moment of realizing that the next, even into January, the next 4 weeks, 6 weeks are just going to be, they're going to demand a lot of me and I'm not entirely sure that I'm up to it. Anyway, I was just sitting here and I just thought, why not pull a card from the Next World Tarot? Just a bit of guidance, a bit of what I need to keep in mind to get through the next few weeks. I drew the Six of Pentacles. I don't know if I'm going to put this in the video. I felt like I needed to have a record of this for myself. The Six of Pentacles is one of those cards that I often really don't like in a lot of tarot decks. I think they lean a lot into the charity model, which only reinforces the status quo rather than challenging it, only perpetuates inequality rather than resolving or fixing it. And this has to be one of my favorite Six of Pentacles in any deck. The key word for this is redistribution, and it's got two characters who are sort of surrounded by boxes and bags of first aid, disaster relief, food, and they're just sort of doing what they need to get this stuff out to the people who need it. And I think this depiction is really coming from the point of view of encouraging us to, show up and offer what we can where we can, to give without expectation of receiving anything in return, just to give because it's the right thing to do, and because somebody else needs that. What hit me about this card right now is just being on the flip side of that, I suppose, of just recognizing when I need to ask for a bit more help and support and aid from the people around me and from my community. When I'm not really in a position to be showing up and giving and providing emotional labor or resources, but when I'm really the one who needs all of that from the people around me. But I suppose a big part of me is still riddled with internalized ableism, and I can find it hard to rely on the people around me in the way that sometimes I need to. I think I am still, to some extent, I've still bought into the idea, the capitalist idea, that I am only valuable insofar as, you know, how much value I produce for my community, for my employer, that I have to almost like earn my right to exist by producing some kind of value. And right now I just don't feel like I have a lot of that capacity left. And I just feel like this card is reminding me that that doesn't mean that I don't deserve or that I'm not worthy of help and support. I think normally when I see this card, I see it as a call to, you know, be like one of the two people that are featured in the card, to show up and provide that support. But right now when I'm looking at it, instead it feels like them showing up for me and asking what they can do for me and what I need, and offering that and whatever they can, you know, no strings attached. It feels like they're showing up for me. It's a reminder that my support network is there. They're ready, they're waiting, they're prepared. I have to let them know what I need. I don't know if I'm going to put this in the video. I just felt like I almost needed to hear myself say all this out loud, and to, I don't know, document it for myself if I need to play it back or something. But who knows? We'll see how I feel come the end of the month. Okay, so today I was thinking we could do just a little doing well, do better spread. Nice and simple. Just to sort of check in, get a bit of a positive affirmation with the doing well. Ooh. Also not drop the cards, hopefully. And then also just get a little bit of direction on where I can improve or just like focus a little bit better on, you know. So doing well, do better. Let's go. What am I doing well at the moment? Oh, I got the Fool. Nice. And what can I do better? Oh, I got the Ace of Cups. So two like beginning cards. And I feel like that's kind of appropriate given that, I know I've said it a lot, but I've just started a new job. It all still feels very new to me. I think I'm 6 weeks in, 8 weeks in. It's still pretty fresh. So getting two cards that sort of represent the beginnings or the seeds feels very appropriate. The Fool for what I'm doing well, I think is really interesting. I think the Fool is about sort of just like going off and trusting, like starting a new endeavor, new journey, new opportunity, whatever it is, and just trusting, maybe not that it's all going to work out perfectly, but that you are going to be okay. I think it's also sort of about following your own path, like trusting in your heart and yourself enough to go in the direction that you feel called to go in. And I like here in this Fool how there's sort of graffiti over the sign that says nowhere. So it almost feels like this journey is less about the destination as it is the journey. And maybe it's more of a journey inward, or as much of a journey inward as it is outward. I think this is just a nice affirmation that I am doing as well as I can on this new journey. And I just had a quick squiz at the guidebook, and it is funny to me how like the message here actually talks about the character here giving their 2 weeks. Which is literally what I did at my old job. The guidebook also says, deconstruct what this journey means. Take on the burdens and the delights. Understand that the cost of starting new is growing up, but the cost of growing up is not your wayward magic. And that's really beautiful. I think it's a nice message and reminder for me that even though this is the beginning of a new job, potentially a new career, like this opportunity does not represent the moment that I lose myself. Instead, it should be the moment that I find myself, or I'm moving more towards who I want to be and who I am. I feel like this card is just a bit of a nod to the fact that I'm doing pretty well at like just being myself in this new situation. I'm not pretending to be someone I'm not to impress the people around me. Like obviously I'm trying to be as good as I can be in the new job, but I'm still being me because I want this to be like a long-term opportunity. I want, I don't know, I want this to be a position that I can grow into and grow with, you know. I don't want it just to be a job. But in order to do that, I sort of need I don't know, I need to make it my own. I need to be myself. I need to be true to myself. And I think I'm doing that. And then the Ace of Cups for what I need to do better. And now I've spoken about before how the Suit of Cups primarily, like the key or the main keyword for the Suit of Cups for me is connection. And I think in order to connect in ways that are safe and fulfilling, we first have to connect with our sense of self. And that's why to me, so often the Ace of Cups represents things like self-care, self-acceptance, self-love, as well as boundaries and fulfillment. Basically, it's about creating and being aware of that healthy environment that we need in order to grow into the world and to find and create and sustain healthy and satisfying connections. Whether that's with other people, with things, with our values, with our spirituality, whatever it is. First, we need that fertile, healthy ground to grow from. And so I'm just being reminded of those things, of the self-care, of the boundaries that are so important, especially right now, in order for me to flourish. The Ace of Cups is just such an open, beautiful, almost joyful card. It's not a defensive one. It's not a conservative one. And I think I need to remember that a little bit more. That being more open and more receptive and more accepting is how I sustain my energy, is how I refill my energy. That's not to say that I need to be so flexible with my boundaries that I almost don't have any, that I don't need to be considering my spoons and my energy resources. It's just a bit of a different approach. I don't know if I'm explaining that very well, but I hope you understand what I mean. That shift of focus, of being open and excited about the abundance and about the opportunities rather than scared of them, I suppose. Anyway, that's my doing well, do better. A nice little spread to finish off my day. Okay, so it's time to wrap up my month with the Next World Tarot. And like I said at the beginning of this video, this is one of my favorite decks of all time. It's not going anywhere. And I've spoken about this deck so much over the years that I've had it on my channel that I don't know that there's much more left to say about it. But I suppose if I had to sum up my own experience just in this past month with working with this deck pretty much alone, I guess I'm just so grateful that I chose to spend December with the Next World Tarot. December was just as challenging, maybe even more so than I had anticipated. I was just so grateful to have this deck at my side. It was firm and asked questions of me where I needed it, where that was beneficial to me, but it was also so supportive and just validating. Validating is the one word that I keep using to describe this deck and my experience of it. It validated some really toxic ableism I had experienced and that was sort of impacting me and my experience throughout December, but it also challenged me and asked me to reflect on my own internalized ableism and how that was sort of hurting me from the inside out. And I think that's a great example of what this deck does so well, is that it does challenge us to consider larger systemic issues, both how we are affected by those things, but also how we contribute to them. And in that way, working with this deck never feels like some fluffy, in a vacuum, idealized sort of experience. I feel like this deck sees me for who I am in the world that I currently live in the context of my life and the challenges that I have to navigate and the things that I have to confront, both internally and externally. I think the deck just does such a great job of representing so many lived realities that it allows you to see yourself in these cards and to be validated, or to see where different systemic issues are influencing you and be validated, or to recognize where you're buying into these really harmful biases and assumptions. It's just such a beautifully supportive and expansive experience working with this deck. And even though this tuck box is a little worse for wear, this is one of those decks that if for some reason, you know, I lost my collection and had to repurchase, this would be one of the first few that I would think about. If I ever got to a situation where I could only have a handful of decks with me, this would be one that I would have to keep. I love that the creator, Cristy C Road, has taken each archetype or message or core lesson of each card and expanded it and done something new with it than I've ever seen in any other tarot deck. Like with the Tower card that we spent plenty of time working with. It's not just a personal, chaotic experience of upheaval. It's a collective reckoning of what is wrong and what is right and standing up for what we believe in and defending the sacred. The Six of Pentacles isn't just about charity or giving and receiving. It's about redistribution, assessing our own personal needs and the needs of the people around us, even outside of our usual circles, and considering our place in that world, in that context, in that community, and our role in it. I think this deck does feel quite American, like it feels very situated in the United States of America. And sometimes that's something that's a little off-putting to me, not because there's anything inherently wrong with America and the people who live there, but because I'm not from there. And so sometimes that disconnect and that slight dissociation from my own experience is kind of jarring. But this deck represents, yes, an American context, but experiences that I don't want to say are entirely universal, because I'm sure not everybody identifies with this deck, but that feel close to home for me, that feel relevant to me and my lived experience too. And although it recognizes and validates the difficulties and challenges and tragedies of our lived experiences, it never feels like tragedy porn. It never just feels depressing. This feels so hopeful and celebratory and optimistic, even though it's sort of situated in this apocalyptic dystopian sort of background of so many of the cards. And I guess I just love that, I don't know whether you want to call it balance or juxtapositioning of the real, the raw, the hard, the tragic, with the uplifting, with the affirming, with the validating, with the celebratory. So I could go on and on about this deck. I kind of already have, but I think it's pretty clear that this is just a deck that is near and dear to my heart. That is absolutely one of my top 5 favorite decks of all time. I love it, and it will absolutely be staying in my collection, no doubt about it. Also, just as an FYI, it is now after Christmas, so I've gotten through the worst of like the Christmas period and everything at work. It was rough, but I'm feeling a lot better now. So even though I shared some quite emotional moments with you in this video, I want you to know that I am okay. I have an incredible support network, and they really stepped it up for me when I spoke to them about the fact that I really needed a little bit of extra help. And with that help, I got through it. So I'm doing a lot better now. Of course, I have to say a big thank you to my patrons over on Patreon for all of their support, and especially big thank you goes to Livia, Lynette Brown, Laurie, and Ian Yitzhak for their very generous support of me and my channel. And of course, thank you for watching. I will see you in the next video soon. So much love. Bye.